Elvis is a little bit taller than I am. Good morning, brothers and sisters. This is really an honor. And first I want to thank the song team for singing my most favorite hymn. I used to sing it as a little girl, and it just tells me about each of us are so unique and so different, and God has a special relationship with each and every person, and I feel it when I hear that hymn, so thank you. So I want to start by saying I'm nervous, and I am not a pastor, and I'm a pastor's wife, and there's a big difference. And I don't give sermons. That's my husband's calling. And you'll hear one from him next week, if you're here. Today, I just want to share some of my simple testimony about my spiritual journey. Now, Pastors Mike and Adonia have asked me more than once to give a sermon. And I always told them, I don't do that. So no one was more surprised than me when God told me clearly that I was supposed to give a sermon, and not just any talk, but on the topic that pastors traditionally feel they need to cover every year, but it's very uncomfortable for the pastor and the congregation. So, in true Marjorie Busing fashion, when God told me to do this, I pushed back. And I argued, and I wrestled with my heavenly parent. You see, my relationship with God has been a lot like Abraham when he tried to negotiate saving Sodom and Gomorrah. It's a lot like Jonah trying to escape going to Nineveh. And it's a lot like Moses arguing with God in front of the burning bush. But just like all those people, I debated all my points why I shouldn't be here today, and I lost. So God won out, and so that's why I'm here before you. But that's kind of my relationship with God. I kind of go kicking and screaming to do what needed to be done. So the subject today is my journey and my offering, and I'm going to talk some about tithing, which is an uncomfortable subject. Actually, I have two early childhood memories and experiences with tithing. When I was really young, I'm really young, like 6 years old. So the first was when I started going to Sunday school. My mom and dad would always give us a few coins to put in the Sunday school offering. And that's where I first learned about giving. And then, when I was about 6 years old, this is show and tell, I started making these hot pads on a loom. You might have done that too. And I would sell these to all my grandparents and aunts and uncles and all of the people in the neighborhood for 10 cents each. I think my granddaughter made me this one. So I still have a loom to make them. Anyway, that was my first business adventure. And when I brought home my 10 cents from each of these, then my mom taught me 9 cents went into my piggy bank, and 1 cent went to go to church for the offering. And so that was my first experience trying to understand tithing. And then the second thing I remember, again, I was really young. One night, my parents were hurrying us to bed a little bit early, myself and my siblings, and because we were getting a visit from two of the elders from the Rose Hill Presbyterian Church. They were coming to talk to Mom and Dad. And they came to talk to them about making a pledge for their offering. And I remember late that night going to sleep and hearing Mom and Dad in conversation, trying to decide how much they could give, and really struggling with it. So that was my second early childhood experience with the idea of making an offering and tithing. So fast forward to when I joined our movement 50 years ago this year. 50 years ago. So when I joined the movement, I was all in. I gave everything, and I lived as a missionary for 12 years. And I usually lived in a center, and even when we were having our first couple kids, we lived a very public life as a missionary. And then in 1987, Richard was chosen by our true parents to join the American Freedom Coalition. And that was when we received our first paycheck in 12 years. And we rented a home, and I remember so clearly the day we received our first paycheck. Richard looked at that paycheck and said something like, "I don't feel good about taking this money. We should be giving to our true parents." Then he added, "This can't be sustainable. We need to find a way to support ourselves and our work." That month, I gave birth to our third child. And that Christmas season, I started a business in a small mall in Massachusetts selling fiber optic lights. So the very next year, we had our fourth child. And I made enough in our business over Christmas holidays for the down payment on our first house. Now, it was 1989. We bought a small, very small, ranch-style home in the woods in Concord, New Hampshire. We paid under $100,000, and we paid, our loan was over 11%. What an adventure. But we felt so blessed. We just were so grateful for all we had. We couldn't believe it. And it was then that I started to feel like I was missing something very important. We attended church every Sunday, and we always prepared a donation. I taught Sunday school forever. And anytime we were needed, we always were there to serve and support. But while I was nursing my children, I developed a habit of reading the Bible. So I would read the Bible, just during that time. And with 4 children, I ended up reading the Bible cover to cover from the beginning to the end 4 times. And in the very beginning of the Bible, Genesis chapter 4, we hear the story of Cain and Abel making an offering. That didn't go so well, but anyway, they made an offering right away in the very beginning. And then when you get further into the Bible, the books of Moses, actually, everybody made offerings all the way through the Bible. But in the books of Moses, he started talking about a tithe and what that meant. Now, okay, Mark, here we go. There we go. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. And this is in Leviticus, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, right at the beginning. And Moses really describes how important it is to give a tenth, a tithe being a tenth. Also, oh dear, I was wondering if, David, could you read it? Because I can't read it from here.
True Father, I'm tithing. By offering a tithe from your material possessions, you can make a condition that you offer all that you have. Although you do not offer the whole, offering a portion with all of your heart and mind is valuable in that sense. By offering one, the rest of the 9 can also be considered holy. The person who tithes will never perish. As days go by, his storage room will be filled with more material possessions and blessing.
Well, thank you, David. I just can't quite see it from here. So I began to feel at that point that this was important. And I'd certainly heard my share of sermons on the subject. We always gave, but it helped. In my gut, I felt it just wasn't enough. But we didn't have any extra money. We were always short money because we have 4 kids, 6 and under. More than once, when I got to the checkout at the grocery store with all the kids hanging off the basket, I didn't have enough money to pay for everything in the cart, and I had to put some of the things on the conveyor belt back. And I was mortified by that. It was very embarrassing for me. But that was the reality of our situation. And then, Richard was doing a lot of political work, and he started studying Rick Warren. And he shared with me one of Rick Warren's books. I know Pastor Mike has read those. And I couldn't find the book. Our house is a little in disarray after the flood, but I couldn't find the book that I'd read. I think it was The Purpose-Driven Church. But Rick Warren shared that he and his wife had been exactly in the position that Richard and I were in, with nothing extra to make a monetary offering. And they started by pledging a clear percentage total of their income to begin their tithing journey. And he encouraged others to start there. I just didn't have a place to start, I couldn't imagine. I knew we really couldn't give 10% at that point, but I didn't. For me, it was kind of like all or nothing. And then Rick Warren said, it doesn't have to be that way. So, and then later on in his book, he said that he was blessed over and over, he felt, after making that decision, and he says, now today, I tithe 90% of my income and live off 10% because he's written some fabulous best-selling books. So that's not our story. But Richard and I began to talk about this idea of beginning somewhere. And so we wrestled with this, and we decided that first year in Concord that we would pledge 3%. And it was 3% of our income after taxes. So that, and we promised that we would increase that pledge every year until we got to 10%. So, actually, the hardest part of the whole thing was making that commitment. That was the hardest part. Once we made the commitment, we just did it. Another hurdle that I faced in making a tithe was to do it with a pure heart and with a blindfold on. We liked giving to causes and charities that resonated with our heart. But our tithe, we knew, needed to be different. And it should be made with no strings attached. We had sometimes seen faith leaders, both outside and in our movement, use public monies in ways that we would not have chosen to do. But we felt that to make a pure offering between us and our Heavenly Parent, that it was important that we didn't have to say a say in what it was used for. Again, the hardest part was making the decision to trust, but we both felt it was the right thing to do. It took us several years to get to the point where we were offering 10%. It wasn't fast. It took some serious time. And from that point, it probably took another 5 years before we could get to the point where we were offering our 10% on our income before taxes. But we did it. It wasn't easy, but we did it. It was a process. And I'm really grateful for Rick Warren because I didn't see that pathway. From the time we made that commitment to make a full tithe, our businesses grew and flourished. We also made a few mistakes sometimes, as you do in business, and we learned from those mistakes. Our children grew up working and helping us in our businesses, and it really helped their growth. They became good, honest, hardworking, well-educated world citizens with wonderful spouses, and our children have given us 5 healthy, strong, beautiful grandchildren that are the joy of our lives. So Richard and I have, because of that, and because of tithing, we've always been able to continue on our spiritual callings in various capacities. We've also been able to travel to many places in the world. I even went to North Korea. Not many people can say that. And, oh yes, this is for Gary. In the 1990s, I campaigned and ran and won a seat in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, where I was a lawmaker for 2 terms. I never imagined ever doing these kind of things, traveling that way, and I just didn't even imagine having 4 kids. I had so many opportunities, and I know in my heart that it came from that one point in time where we made a commitment and a decision. And this quote from Father, he says, "You'll never die." I don't actually believe that. I'm 74 now, and my mom lived to 96. And I think at some point my physical body is going to pass away. But I have to say, our storage room has been filled with many, many blessings. And I'm truly grateful that together we began the journey to make a tithe. It wasn't easy. As I look back on my life, I know everything changed at that point. It was our turning point in our journey. And more than being blessed externally, I feel it changed my heart. That I became more grateful, more trusting, and I gave up having a comparative mind. It really helped me see everybody as my brother and sister and really have a different kind of heart. And for that, I'm truly grateful. So that's what I wanted to share today. And I'd like all of you to join me in prayer. Oh, my Heavenly Parent, thank you so much, most of all for our true parents, and for this amazing spiritual journey. Each of us have an opportunity to open our hearts to you and walk in the garden together and share our true selves. The good, the bad, the ugly, we can even argue. But you're always there for us, and we're so grateful. We pray that you can bless and protect each and every person here, but also those that are not, and all of our brothers and sisters. Every person in this world is your son or your daughter, and you love each one. And we pray that we can have that heart towards each other. Heavenly Parent, we're so sorry when we hurt your heart, and we pray that every day we can strive to bring you hope, you joy, and peace. We see turmoil in this world, and especially in our nation right now, but we pray that we can have the heart to think the best of each other and to say hello as brothers and sisters and create heaven wherever we're at. Thank you so much for having such a generous heart and creating such a beautiful world for us. And we pray that we can give back to you. I pray together with everyone here in the name of Marjorie Busing of a Blessed Central Family. Adieu. Thank you.